Hey guys, what's up? How's it going? I know I say this in every video, but it truly has been a long time since I have uploaded anything on this channel, and sadly, I didn't upload as many album reviews as I wanted to this year. 2020, it's difficult for me to find motivation to do stuff. I had COVID for about 10 days, like a week, and I'm fully recovered now from it. Thank God, and I am just glad to be filming this video for you guys, and I love doing these videos, and this is my top 10 albums of 2020. 2020 was a really rough year, but I think it was a fantastic year for music. There were some amazing tracks that came out this year from all different types of genres, and hopefully that reflects too with my list here. I'm going to start from 10, work my way to 1 as usual, and at number 10 we are going to start with Plastic Hearts by Miley Cyrus. This was Miley's album with a different transitional style, whether it's with her wardrobe or musical style. Miley always tends to, at least with the past few records, switch it up and focus on a certain type of genre or type of theme. And I think she does that really well on Plastic Hearts. This album was acclaimed to be a rock-charged album, a lot of 80s influence, and the 80s influence really shows on this record. You can really see Miley has her inspirations on her sleeve here with Stevie Nicks, the Midnight Sky, super similar to Stevie Nicks tracks, and then that whole remix of that song with Stevie Nicks' song is an amazing collaboration. And then of course the grand collab with Billy Idol. You can really see the 80s influence, the Billy Idol style a little bit in this record, especially with the song Night Crawling. And then there's some kind of slower ballady tracks. There's a slow ballad but yet rocky track with Joan Jett in it, and you can definitely see a Joan Jett like badass kind of hard rocker influence on this, like front woman aesthetic. But honestly, there's songs on this album that are slower and really soft in touch, like High and Angels Like You. Those are some amazing moments where Miley really reflects her softer side vocally and does it in a way that's almost like rustic, kind of like a country, like a raw country style. And you can see that through Miley growing up. And then some really rock charged songs on here, like Plastic Hearts, like I said, Night Crawling. Some amazing songs. So overall, this was something I just kept going back to as just a fun record to listen to. And I think she pulls this album off for the most part well. It's not a solid 10 out of 10 rating by any means, but it's pretty close. I kept coming back to a lot of these tracks, and some of them are my favorite of 2020. My top 3 favorite songs from this album are High, Angels Like You, and Night Crawling. Number 9 for me is The Killers' latest record, their comeback record from like their previous record, Wonderful Wonderful, in 2017. This is Imploding the Mirage by The Killers. And this kind of reminds me of them going back to almost like Battleborn, but yet very synth focused on this record. It still kind of has that Americana vibe with Brandon Flowers' vocals and even the production style to an extent. But I really like how they focus on the synths here, and the bass work is still fantastic, even though they don't have like their original bassist and guitarist. There's still some amazing moments. The guitar solo in Caution absolutely shreds. One of the best guitar solos from The Killers, in my opinion. There's some other amazing tracks on this album that really bring it together. The ending track, Imploding the Mirage, fantastic. And of course, Fire and Bone, one of my personal favorites. The show's more of a quirky, talking head side of The Killers. It's very funky and weird, but I love it. I think they pull it off fantastic. And my top 3 favorite tracks, if you haven't noticed, is Fire and Bone, Imploding the Mirage, as well as Caution. But I also want to throw My God in there, because what an anthemic song that really pulls you up. Gotta throw that in there too. I know it's a top 3, but I kind of broke my rule a little bit, so sorry. Next we have Down in the Weeds, Where the World Once Was by Bright Eyes. This is Bright Eyes' comeback album. They haven't released music in almost, I think, 10 years. But Conor Oberst has always been working on different projects and so many different things, featuring on other artists' songs as well. He's just always been busy, but I'm so glad Bright Eyes is back because I really missed that really dark emo side of the band, but also with these multi-instrumentals and like really different styles that they pull off. And I think they kind of combine everything into one on this record. It is kind of a mixed bag in a way. You got some really folky songs, you got some rockier like folk alt songs. They combine a lot of folk, country, and electronic, and the multi-instrumentals done by Nathan are just fantastic. The horns that are added on this album and everything else, it really ties in together well. And, you know, Connor just has this way of writing really dark, depressing imagery and angst, and it really reflects through the whole album with several situations that he's talking about. Number 7 for me is The New Abnormal by The Strokes. I'm a pretty big Strokes fan. I prefer more of the earlier work and the first like 3 albums overall, but I think the Strokes are one of the most unique like alt rock bands kind of in the scene, and with this record they really brought something together in a unique way. They focus more on synthesizers, but still keeping the band like at their foundation with really hooky guitar riffs and awesome bass work and drums. Just keep it going. And Julia Casablanca, still, his vocal delivery is very unique on this album. He hits some high falsettos like in an Eternal Summer, which is a really poppy, weird song for the Strokes to write, but it kind of works. And you see other moments that kind of feel more like the older Strokes, like Not the Same Anymore. I love the opening track, The Adults Are Talking. I think it goes hand in hand with the closer, Ode to the Mets. They both just tie in together so well from start to finish. Top 3 tracks on this album, kind of hard to pick, but it would probably be The Adults Are Talking, Not the Same Anymore, and Why Are Sundays So Depressing. Number 6 for me is The Slow Rush by Tame Impala. It's funny, at 2020, in the summer of 2020, I recently got super big into listening to Tame Impala, and I just listened to them a lot over the summer, and they were like a really good feel-good band, psychedelic and different. And Kevin Parker's been a DJ for a long time, so he's noticed what he's doing behind synths and everything and really creating unique sounds for sure, but still keeping it organic. This record definitely has less guitars in it, but that still doesn't take away from the amazing synths that feel so organic, like I was mentioning before. The lyrical theme on this album is all about time, the slow rush. You see it in the album cover, you see it in the title, and it talks about the past, present, future, mostly worrying so much about the future and getting in your head and thinking about the past. But this record really like is a positive thing. It's telling you to move forward, not get lost in yesterday, which is one of the best songs on this album with like a super catchy bass groove to it. A lot of these songs are just really warmy to the ear. This is definitely was a summer record for me for sure. I listened to this a lot when I was hiking, and it's still, Tame Impala always has these psychedelic chill vibes to their music, and this record, it's no different. My favorite tracks on this album are Lost in Yesterday, Borderline, and Breathe Deeper. Number 5 is RTJ4 by Run the Jewels. A duo that has their own solo projects that were very popular, but really together as a team, they have some of the most amazing songs in hip-hop that I've ever heard. All of their albums, they really bring the punches, and they work together. Their chemistry is so good. I really love the features that are on this album. They have the lead vocalist of Rage Against the Machine, Zach De La Rocha, excuse me, and then Josh Homme from Queens of the Stone Age. Like, they really bring an edge to this album that I feel like they haven't done maybe on their previous work, but I mean, Run the Jewels are just such a group. They really bring it with every single release, and this one really focused on social issues that were happening a lot in 2020 with racism, police brutality, and just the way you treat people, like morality in general. And there's some really hard-hitting lyrics as you dive more into the track list. There's some bangers right in the beginning, but then it gets a little bit more raw and serious with the lyrics. And you really feel something when you look into the lyrics on this record. It's insane. Also, this record has some of the best production I've heard in hip-hop. LP always bringing really strong production on the records, and there's some amazing beats on this album, such as Out of Sight and Holy Kalamafuck. This was a great album to listen to. I don't listen to a lot of hip-hop albums in full because there's only so much I can take, but this record is really was really something special. My favorite tracks on this album are Out of Sight, Goonies vs. E.T., and Pulling the Pin. Number 4 for me was Ohms by the Deftones. I'm a pretty heavy Deftones fan. I'm more familiar with like their early work up until White Pony, and even like their other record, Koi, K-U, I don't know how to say it, some Japanese name. But this really ties in all of the unique things about Deftones in their discography into one record, and I think they do a great job of that. This was by far like my favorite heavy like metal alternative album of 2020. Deftones always puts out some great stuff, and the riffs on this album, the ripping bass work, the drums, and Chino's vocals, they just never stop, and he does a great job of blending everything so quiet, soft, and atmospheric, but then adding this really heavy, brutal edge to it. Really, what I love about this album is the instrumentation. It never stops and it always goes, and it adds some amazing transition time through the track list. Like I said, amazing, more quieter moments like Eurythmics, and then you got the ripping Genesis. It's great. My top 3 favorite songs off of this album are Urantia, Ohms, and Radiant City. Number 3 for me is Punisher by Phoebe Bridgers. This is her second album that she's released, and Phoebe Bridgers is known as like a folk emo artist now, and she's really grown some popularity, featuring in various bands and artists. And this record was a huge step up from her debut, which feels more a little quiet and lo-fi on the production, whereas this album, she definitely steps it up as far as her songwriting goes, and just more heavier guitars and drums, and it feels like the production is a little bit more just polished on this record as well. And you really see Phoebe's progression as like an artist and songwriter. Lyrically, this album just talks about a bunch of different things that are super relatable, but also kind of weird in a way. She always has like a sarcastic humor about writing really dark lyrics, and you can find that stuff on like Halloween and Savior Complex, and even I Know the End. This album touches on a lot, from questioning religion to aliens and UFOs to the end of the world coming and Phoebe's nightmares and being a major obsessive Elliott Smith fan. There's just so much to dive into on this record, but it's done in a really amazing way. I really think she stepped it up big time on this record. There's so many collaborations of people that worked on this with her, a bunch of friends, the Boy Genius crew, Lucy Dacus and Julian Baker, as well as Bright Eyes, Connor Oberst. My personal 3 favorite songs on this album are Chinese Satellite, I Know the End, and Graceland 2. Number 2 for me is Petals for Armor, which is Hayley Williams' first debut album, solo album, where you really see a shift from Paramore, not necessarily leaving Paramore, but just doing different things on this record. And again, kind of like I said with the Phoebe Bridgers record, she pulled people from Paramore to help her with this record. Taylor's doing the guitars on this record, and the touring Paramore bassist Joey absolutely lays down some incredible bass work on this album, really making some funky, groovy songs come to life. A lot of songs on this record, so there's a lot to dive into, but basically Hayley Williams is expressing her femininity a little bit more after being the lead front woman in a massive pop rock group, and she really just talks about her struggles with her divorce as well, to learning to love herself and then falling in love again with other people, as well as just accepting things for what they are. This album really does take you through almost like a diary of Hayley Williams the past few years, and like what she's been feeling like after Paramore, and just dealing with several different issues. Sonically, this album is a little all over the place. You can find some ballads, some pop bangers, some 80s vibes, and some straight up Radiohead inspired songs on here. It really is kind of a mixed bag, but it somehow fits together really nicely for Hayley Williams, and to really just see her do like a range of different styles, and just have more of a softer, delicate side to her vocals too. It's nice here. My favorite songs on this record are Leave It Alone, Crystal Clear, Roses, Lotus, Violet, and Iris. I probably would name many more, but since I do these types of top album videos, I only do like a top 3 to kind of keep it short. Are you ready for number one, guys? This is an album I really wish I could have reviewed. And it's funny how I've mentioned how I've gotten really into certain artists from 2020 because music was just such a big outlet. And I mentioned one of those artists being Tame Impala, but another artist I listened to and my Spotify rap showed me, apparently I listened to her a lot, especially towards the early summer. And that is Fetch the Bolt Cutters by Fiona Apple, her long-awaited album. I didn't really know Fiona Apple too much besides the hit song Criminal, but once I listened to this record, Fetch the Bolt Cutters, it made me check her entire discography to see how she's really developed as an artist. And this is by far her most risky, experimental record, but also in the best way possible. So many things going on with this record musically. It just feels like this big craziness of Fiona's life. And she really puts herself 100% out there on these songs. I mean, there's some weird things you hear in this album, but I really love the percussion-focused tracks. On every song, you hear some unique percussion, whether it be some like raw, like maybe handmade drum instruments, or just some other really unique things, like you hear dogs barking, crazy noises. It's just, you hear so many like weird, quirky things on this record. She kind of, I feel like she's very similar to Regina Spektor, but a little bit more unconventional than Regina Spektor, and I'm not saying that in a bad way whatsoever between either artist, but I just think she has a really unique vocal delivery on this album. You can feel the quirkiness, and it really kind of shows her true self, and I love the thumping piano styles you hear on this album from Shamika. It's an absolute amazing song, and you hear some poetic spoken word like in the self-titled song Fetch the Bolt Cutters. It's absolutely fantastic. And this album really ties together all of the issues that Fiona had in middle school growing up and dealing with bullies and kind of trying to get some self-confidence even when people were making fun of her and she was having a tough childhood, and just growing up and going through relationships and dealing with a bunch of tough situations and really just pulling through those situations and making the best out of it and becoming like the best of yourself, and really from start to finish that this album reflects that. And this record absolutely was super special to me. I didn't listen to it absolutely religiously, because I feel like it's one of those records that if you play the crap out of it, it might possibly make you feel like, it like lose its special touch. But this album truly was something amazing, like amazingly special to me, that came out in 2020 of this year. I honestly love every single song on this album, but if I had to pick my top 3 favorite tracks, it would probably be Drum Set, the self-titled song Fetch the Bolt Cutters, as well as Shamika. But some other outstanding moments is Under the Table, as well as Heavy Balloon and Newspaper. Well, that was my list, guys, of my top 10 albums of 2020. I'm sure probably after this coming year of next year, 2021, I'll probably like look back at this video and be like, wow, there's so many other things I should have listened to that I could have put on here, because that's always the way it happens. But hopefully 2021 is a new fresh start, and hopefully things will get better, and I have hope that they will. And I have hope too that 2021 will be filled with amazing music, because I truly believe we were blessed in 2020 with some amazing albums and songs. So as always, guys, stay brutal, stay tuned for more videos, and see ya later.